I was on Marcus's back porch in early April, his Labrador asleep across the threshold, when he told me he was finally feeling like he'd made it. He's 44. A new job offer had just come in that would push his combined household income past $200,000. House 60% paid off. 2 kids, both college funds started. He said the thing most men his age say when they get a little bit of momentum, which was that he was probably solidly upper middle class at this point. I asked him a question. Marcus, if you lost your job tomorrow, how long could you and Jen keep living the life you're living right now? He sat there with his coffee for a second. The upper middle class didn't come out a second time. What came out was, I don't know, maybe 4 months, 5, 6 at most. That's the gap I want to talk about today. Not the one between rich and poor, which gets covered everywhere. The gap between what most people think their wealth is and what their wealth can actually do for them. Because there's a number that tells you where you rank in net worth, there's a different number that tells you where you rank in cash you can actually touch. And there's a third one, the one almost nobody runs, that tells you whether you're financially free or just financially decorated. For most middle-class American households, those 3 numbers tell completely different stories. I'm Tom. This channel is about real personal finance, the kind that actually works for normal people, instead of the kind that gets you to click on a thumbnail. No motivational fluff, no fantasy returns, no get rich quick. Just what the math actually does over time. If that's what you want, hit subscribe. Today I'm walking you through 3 numbers that determine where you actually rank in American wealth, the Federal Reserve and bank rate data behind each one, and the order to run them in so you find the truth and not just the part that flatters you. Then I'll tell you how Marcus's numbers actually shook out, because his story is more common than anyone wants to admit. Here's the whole video in one sentence. You think your wealth rank is about how much you have. The actual rank is about how much you can use. Let me start with the number most people grab first when they try to figure out where they stand. Net worth. Everything you own minus everything you owe. The house at today's value minus what you still owe on the mortgage. Retirement and brokerage accounts minus student loans and car loans and credit card balances. Your cars at honest used car prices, not the prices you paid. Add the assets, subtract the debts, and you get one number that's supposed to summarize your entire financial life on a single line. According to the most recent Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, which is the 2022 study and still the most current comprehensive wealth data the country has, the median American household net worth is about $192,700. Half of all households are above that. The other half sit below. The mean is much higher, roughly $1,060,000, but that average is pulled up dramatically by a small slice of very wealthy households at the top, so the median is the number that tells you where the middle actually is. By age, the medians move predictably. Households under 35 sit at about $39,000. The 35 to 44 bracket lands at $135,600. 45 to 54 moves to $247,000. 55 to 64 climbs to $364,500. The peak wealth decade is 65 to 74 at roughly $410,000. After that, the number actually comes down as retirees draw down what they built. Here's where most net worth videos stop. The most important part of net worth actually starts right here, because one detail buried in this data changes the entire picture. If you strip home equity out of the calculation, if you ask what the median household has left in everything other than the house itself, the median drops from $192,000 to around $58,000, according to Pew Research's analysis of the underlying numbers. The difference, more than $130,000 per household at the middle, is paper wealth. It exists on the balance sheet. It does not buy groceries, pay a mortgage in a month with no paycheck, or fund a single year of retirement without selling the house. The gap between total net worth and actual financial wealth is the first reason most people guess their rank wrong. They look at the Zillow estimate of their house, subtract what's left on the mortgage, see a number that feels comfortable, and assume they're doing well. In one specific sense, they are. The balance sheet is solid. In another sense, they're doing far less well, because the balance sheet is mostly furniture. This brings us to the second number, which I think is the most important number nobody talks about. Liquid net worth. The portion of your wealth you could actually access this week, this month, this year, without selling your home or hitting an early withdrawal penalty on a 401k. Cash in checking, savings, and money market accounts, taxable brokerage accounts, bonds, CDs, anything that's available, fully under your control and not locked behind a tax penalty or a real estate transaction. The Fed data on liquid wealth is significantly more uncomfortable than the data on total net worth. The median household has about $8,000 combined across checking, savings, and money market accounts, according to the most recent survey of consumer finances. 8,000. That's the middle of America. Half of households have less than that. Bankrate's 2026 Annual Emergency Savings Report puts the picture into even sharper terms. 53% of American adults do not have enough liquidity to cover a $1,000 emergency expense without going into debt. Roughly 1 in 4 have no emergency savings at all, meaning if the car needed a transmission tomorrow, they would put it on a credit card. 29% are carrying more credit card debt than they have in emergency savings. These are not the numbers of households that are quietly building wealth in financial accounts they just don't think about. In reality, their total liquid picture, before any pre-tax retirement accounts and before any home equity, is fundamentally underwater against a single bad week. The wealth on paper is real. The wealth in reach is not. Most people get hit by the first shock right here. They run their gross net worth, see a comfortable 6-figure number, and feel reassured. Then they run their liquid net worth, see a number maybe a tenth that size, and realize they don't have the cushion they thought they had. They were running the wrong number to feel okay. By age, liquid net worth tracks worse than gross net worth, because younger households are more likely to be in net debt, and older households are more likely to have everything locked in retirement accounts and home equity. Plenty of 50-year-olds with a net worth of $300,000 are sitting on $10,000 or $15,000 in actual cash. By 60, the same shape repeats at higher numbers, with 25 or 30 in the bank and everything else parked in 401ks, IRAs, and a house. The total wealth looks like a good answer. The accessible wealth looks like a problem. Now the third number, which I think is the only one that ever actually mattered. Call it your Freedom Multiplier. People in the FIRE community have a version of this concept they call FI ratio, or runway. Different label, same idea. And most people outside that community have never run it. The math is simple. Take your liquid net worth, the second number we just calculated. Divide it by your monthly spending. The answer is the number of months you could keep living the life you live right now if your paycheck stopped tomorrow. No new income, no panic selling your house, no early withdrawal penalty on retirement accounts. Just your current accessible wealth divided by your current burn rate. That number, for most middle-class American households, comes in between 3 and 12 months. For wealthier households, it lands between 1 and 5 years. For households that have actually reached financial independence, it's infinite, because their investments generate enough to fund the burn rate without anybody needing to work. 2 caveats on this math. Your real burn rate without a paycheck is a little higher than your current monthly spending, because health insurance costs jump when you leave an employer plan. On the other side, your tax bill drops because you're no longer earning. The two roughly offset for most households, which is why this simple version of the calculation is close enough to make a decision with. Here's what makes this number so much more honest than any of the others. Your gross net worth can hide behind appreciating home values you'll never spend. The liquid number can hide behind unusually low spending you can't actually sustain forever. Freedom Multiplier hides nothing. It is the exact answer to the question, if I lost my job tomorrow, how long could I keep being me? Either you have a long runway or you don't. I'll tell you something embarrassing about this number. The first time I ran my own Freedom Multiplier, I was 36, making what I thought was very good money. And the answer came back at 5 months. 5. I had been telling myself I was upper middle class for 3 solid years. 5 months is not upper middle class. It's fragility wearing a nice shirt. A multiplier under 6 months is financial dependence dressed up as a comfortable lifestyle. You're one bad quarter away from chaos, even if your house is worth $700,000. 1 to 2 years is the start of real stability, because you can lose a job and have time to find the right next one, rather than just the next one. 5 years or more is when you start to look like someone with actual options, because you can wait out a bad job market, or take a calculated risk that doesn't work. Infinite is what people are talking about when they say someone is financially independent. My neighbor Paul, who you've seen in other videos on this channel, lives at infinity. His investments fund his entire life without him touching the principal. He drives a Subaru with dog hair on the back seat, hasn't checked his portfolio in 3 months, and his idea of an exciting Friday is mowing the lawn before the rain hits. That's what infinity actually looks like in real life. It isn't yachts or retiring at 35. It's just quiet. That outcome is much rarer than internet headlines suggest, and it's entirely reachable for a household that gets all 3 numbers right and stays with them for 20 or 25 years. Let me show you where this gets uncomfortable, because the 3 rankings often disagree with each other for the same household. And the disagreement is where people get the most useful information about their actual lives. Marcus's 3 numbers, when he and I ran them on a napkin that morning, looked like this. His house is worth about $620,000 on Zillow. He still owes $260,000 on it. $360,000 of home equity, paper wealth. He has $190,000 in his 401k, and Jen's combined. $45,000 in a taxable brokerage account. $18,000 in checking and savings. Their 2 cars are worth about $35,000 in honest used car terms, with $22,000 left on the car loans. No credit card debt. Total assets, roughly $908,000. Debts come to $282,000. Net worth, $626,000. Against the Fed all household median of $193,000, Marcus is way above the middle. Compared to his own age bracket median of $136,000, he's roughly 4.5 times ahead. By the first number, he is comfortably in the top quarter of American households. His liquid net worth, $45,000 in the brokerage plus $18,000 in the bank, equals $63,000. That's the accessible portion, with 401k, home equity, and cars all excluded. Against the median household, it's still ahead. Against the wealthier half of his age bracket, it sits roughly in the middle. By the second number, he's comfortably mid-pack, and the top quartile ranking from the first number didn't carry over. His Freedom Multiplier. He and Jen spend about $9,500 a month, including the mortgage. $63,000 divided by $9,500 is 6.6 months. By the third number, the one that actually measures financial freedom, Marcus is exactly where he said he was when I asked the question on his porch. About 6 months. He has a top 25% net worth and a 6-month runway. Most of his upper middle class is house. What I told Marcus over that second cup of coffee is the same thing I'm going to tell you now. 6 months is not bad. It's also not freedom. And it's not where you want to be at 44, with another 20 years of variable income ahead. The single fastest way to move all three rankings, not just the one, is to grow the second number, which directly grows the third. Bigger taxable brokerage, bigger savings, more accessible cash. That's the move. Adding to the 401k above the employer match while your Freedom Multiplier is 6 months means you're letting the version of you who's 75 overrule the version of you who's 45, when you still have to live through 45 to get to 75 anyway. Now let me circle back to age, because the data does something here you don't expect. By the first number, your ranking improves as you age almost automatically. The house gains equity, retirement accounts compound. You move through the brackets on the wealth ladder simply by not making a serious mistake. A 45-year-old at the median sits at $247,000. A 65-year-old at the median is past $400,000. The number grows whether or not you do anything sophisticated. Compounding does the work. By the third number, age does not help nearly as much. A 60-year-old can have a much higher net worth than a 30-year-old and a worse freedom multiplier, because most of the wealth is in a 401k he can't draw from without penalty, or a house that's appreciated but isn't liquid, or a single concentrated stock position he can't easily exit. The wealth got built. The accessibility of the wealth never did. This is the conversation I want every viewer over 40 to be having right now. Not, am I above the median net worth for my age, which is mostly an automatic answer. The harder question, what does my freedom multiplier look like at my age? And given the years I have left, what does it look like at 65 if I don't change anything? A great gross net worth and a terrible freedom multiplier is the most common shape of middle-class anxiety in America. And you cannot fix the anxiety by looking only at the net worth, no matter how flattering that net worth happens to be. Here's what I want you to actually do this week. I'm being specific because vague advice would defeat the entire point of running through this much data. First, calculate all three numbers in order. Pull up your bank accounts, brokerage, 401k, IRA, mortgage statement, and a Zillow estimate of the house. Add the assets, subtract the debts, get your gross net worth. Strip out the house equity in the retirement accounts, and you get your liquid net worth. Divide that liquid number by your monthly spending, and you get your freedom multiplier in months. About 30 minutes of work for a number you'll reference for the rest of your financial life. Second, figure out which of the three is your bottleneck. If your gross net worth is above the age median, but your liquid is small, your bottleneck is accessibility, and the work is to move money you can move. Build the taxable brokerage, top up the emergency cushion, stop adding to the 401k above the employer match if your freedom multiplier is below 12 months, because compound interest 20 years from now will not pay your rent 6 months from now. If your gross net worth itself is below the age median, your bottleneck is total savings, and the work is contribution rate plus debt reduction. Where both numbers look fine but your spending is high, your freedom multiplier will be low even with a good portfolio, and the work is on the burn rate side rather than the wealth side. Third, set a freedom multiplier target tied to your stage of life. 3 months gets you out of crisis, 6 gets you out of fragility, 12 gets you choice in your next career move, 5 years gets you optionality on whether to work at all. Pick the number that matches the next phase you're trying to enter, and reverse engineer the savings rate that gets you there over the next 2 to 5 years. Without a target, the number drifts. With a target, it moves. Whichever of these three was the most uncomfortable to calculate is probably the one defining your actual life right now. that's the one to work on first. If you want the prerequisite math for any of this, the part about how to actually grow the liquid number once you've decided to, I made a video on this channel called How to Let Your Money Rest and Grow. Watch that next. Drop a comment with your Freedom Multiplier, even if it's smaller than you'd like. The point of this isn't to win against your neighbors. It's to know where you actually stand, so the next 5 years can move you somewhere better. I read every comment, and I'll reply to as many as I can. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.